Welcome back for another episode of The Entrusted, the podcast where we explore leadership development at all levels. Today's episode is called Beyond the Scoreboard, Leadership that Connects Students to School. And we've got an incredible guest joining us. His name is Gabe Trujillo. Gabe is a lifelong educator, coach, and a leader who currently serves as the district athletic director along with a human resources hat that he wears with Title IX. And Gabe brings a powerful perspective on how to cultivate leadership in students. But in the classroom, that's one thing. But outside the classroom and on the court, that's another, and that's where his expertise is. So we're going to talk about that. So welcome, Gabe. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Swanson. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk and hang out with everybody.
For people listening, aspiring leaders who may be considering what is that one seat in the house that I really belong in, where I can use my strengths and talent, or maybe for existing leaders who are thinking about their next step in the leadership career that they're engaged in, I thought it would be fun for us just to talk about what got you into all these multiple hats you're wearing and leadership in general, and where did that passion come from? What's your why?
You know, it really started in inner city West Denver. My grandmother was a teacher, and when she started out as a para.
Uh-huh.
She worked her way up into a teacher, and by the time she left, she was one of the first bilingual educators in DPS. And so being raised by my grandmother, I was that kid in the back of the classroom who was coloring during in-services,
You were
who
always
was
in
running
school.
around. So I was always in the corner
Yeah.
in school. When I came out, I was a dumb jock by trade, so I loved playing sports. It's what saved me. But when I came out, my grandmother said, "Hey, I have a job for you. One of my friends wants to interview you to teach." And I had not explored that opportunity whatsoever. So I went into the interview on a Sunday morning, and by Monday, the very next day, I was teaching my first job at Emerson Street School.
Wow.
And fell in love with the profession. And it was a chance I had taken. I didn't realize I had been preparing myself for that moment, though, for quite a
Yeah.
few years.
Yeah, because you were always in school with your
I was
with your
always in
grandmother.
school. And then when my first job was working at Denver Parks and Rec, teaching little kids various sports activities, baseball, basketball, football, my mentor got me hired. And so by the time I got into the classroom, I felt like I was prepared to teach kids.
Yeah. Well, and I know life didn't come easily for you on the front end of that. And so grandmother, I remember you telling me, is a big influence.
It was a really big deal. I grew up in the housing projects in West Denver. And so I grew up boxing is what my first sport was. Our family fought. And after getting in trouble a couple times, my second grade teacher connected me with my mentor, who's still my mentor to this day.
Wow. That's important.
It is
We all
important.
need mentors, and I think those of us who still have those relationships with some of those people who helped us, they really paved the way for us to pay it forward now where we are in our careers. I think so. That's how you got your start. But I also know you're pretty passionate about what you do, and there's a really big why in there with helping kids.
Absolutely.
And I know you're a dad too, and a husband, and your family unit is important too. And I know you work with a lot of families. Can you just talk a little bit about that and how that's played into what you're doing now?
Absolutely. If I had to sum it up, I would probably say Indigenous leadership. And I had mentors who really poured into my life, helped me come over. Being a product of West Denver, there was a lot of gangs, drug, violence.
Yeah.
And so being on the field and on the court literally saved my life, but it was the people who really did that. And I really want to emphasize it had nothing to do with race. It had everything to do with leaders. And my leaders really were mentors in my life, still my mentors today. And I could name them, but those guys were coaches and they saved my life. And so I really felt like my give back needed to be that mentor that those guys were to me,
Yeah.
what I need to be to my community. And so it runs very passionate with me. So the concept of indigenous leadership, I would say, is when we're in our communities, for our communities, by our communities, that we're leading the kids the right way all the time. And
Yeah.
that concept just it sits in my soul. So whether I'm a teacher, a coach, a principal, I was the CEO of a nonprofit, the title didn't matter to me. It was the work that mattered,
Yeah. Yeah. And making that difference.
making the difference.
Yeah. For the kids. Do you see yourself when you're looking at the kids you serve today in the community about where you started? You know, you say, I know what that kid's going through because I remember that. Some of
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just some stories, as we had a kiddo the other day at one of our schools. He was having a hard time and at CSLA, and I just happened to walk down the hall, and he started talking to me, and for a brief moment, my mind just drifted back into, wow, I lived that. I lived what the story was, and he was talking about he had a cousin who had went to prison. House police came in, kicked in his doors, and he hadn't slept for a while, and
Yeah.
so he was really tired. And he was in the hallway. He had gotten kicked out of class because he wasn't on task, which was the first assignment. But I just felt myself caught up in the story of drifting back into that was me, and really the concept in leadership, there is in there's a program actually called En Lakesh, but and it's a native term for saying "Tú eres mi otro yo," which means you are the other side of me.
Uh-huh.
That was me,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a drift back, an aha moment, if you will, of being with that kid, because those were some of the things that we grew up in.
Same
Uh,
challenges.
Same challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. And for listeners who may not know what CSLA is, you want to tell the
Yeah,
audience?
CSLA is the Colorado Sport Leadership Academy, which is one of our Westminster Public schools, and my office is housed in the school there, and so I get to interact with kids on a daily basis,
That's the
and
beauty in it.
that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it,
Yeah.
right? Depending on the struggle, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
But in that particular incident, and working with the kids, it's I got to process with him, and for probably 10 minutes, my mind just drifted back to, man, that was me.
Your own path.
Yeah,
That got you there.
yeah,
Well, what a great role model. I also know there's a ton of research out there about the things that bond kids to school. And I know in the area you're in with athletics and activities, there's so much opportunity there for student leadership as well. And talk about one of the programs I know you really were the architect of, and it's the Futures. And what's happened since the time you started that to where it is now?
absolutely. So the Westy Futures program is a concept that's been around in Colorado for some time, at least in theory. A good friend of mine in Denver Public Schools, John Andrew, had started working with middle school kids to try to connect them to their high school, and connecting with various sport activities so that the kids would articulate from the middle school into the high school. So we attempted to follow suit, but what happened in our particular incident, and in our case, was we had volleyball tryouts. We were trying out for two teams. We had approximately 40 girls that we could allocate spots for,
Yeah.
and we had 280 kids show up. And so if you remember the conversation, I called Dr. Swanson and I said, I can't cut this sixth grade girl. I was crying. I was in tears.
Can't
So I
cut the
said,
babies.
I can't cut the babies, so I'm going to need a budget increase. So get everybody on the phone. I need a budget increase of 10 to 15,000 so that we could hire coaches. And what we deployed was what we called our D League, and that was, yes, we have a futures program that consists of an A team and a B team that participates in middle school activities. But we want every kid to participate, and when we mean every, it's every. We have special ed kids, we have kids from all walks of life in our Westminster Public Schools, and we want to provide an opportunity for them. And so that launched the D League, which in turn, that entire program has 500 kids participating right now as we speak.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And
Knowing
so
it started from ground zero.
it was ground zero, and it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and some sweat equity. And now we have that exact same program, not in just girls volleyball, boys basketball, girls basketball, football, flag football, and we've expanded. And I will say that the concept of indigenous leadership, we have a ton of our coaches at this point are from the community,
Yeah.
teaching kids in our community.
Yeah.
And we're reciprocating leadership, and,
Yeah.
and it just makes your heart smile.
Yeah, it's the whole village concept.
It is a whole
wouldn't you say?
village.
So I know you started with just drawing something up on a dry erase board, trying to get us to think about the concept of futures at the time, and it's grown. And I know it feeds the high school programs now. And so, where do you account for the success? Because I know the school's winning championships now, the district, and it started with the little people, right, from the futures. So, just talk about that matriculation and what that's done.
Well, and it extends beyond high school. One of the proud moments we've had on our girls basketball team, we have 8 girls playing in college currently. Not just my 2 daughters, but other kids who were involved since they were in 4th and 5th grade have now articulated. We have girls volleyball players who've articulated they're playing in college. We have several of our boys who've now committed to play football in college, and we have some upcoming baseball kids. So the concept of preparation from 4th and 5th grade and the skill building and the skill development that the intensity of the athletic preparation has increased, and it's made our sport programs better. We've qualified, many of our teams now have qualified for state participation in the state championship programs, such as girls basketball, boys football. We had our first state wrestling champion this year.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool to see our kids, and Dakota was in our program.
Yeah.
So,
and it was a female wrestler.
and she was a female wrestler.
Yeah, that's right. How about that? I know that as you look at the program matriculating, and you've had to tweak it, you and the team, over time, where do you want it to go next? What do you think the challenges still are that are remaining that you got to tackle? So that anybody listening, they can think about if they started a program like this, what could they expect?
I think it really does start with leadership, and we say that in a very broad statement. But when I say that, I mean leadership at the very sport specific level. For example, if our baseball coach at the high school is connected with our Futures baseball program and our Futures D League program, then what we've in sense created is a pipeline.
Yeah.
And making sure that all of our pipelines are strong. And so there's no excuse for a good teacher.
Yeah.
And so having a great leader, a great teacher at the helm of each of our programs to ensure that our kids are articulating through the pipeline. And it's the same in school. It's the same from a 4th grade math teacher to a 7th grade math teacher to a senior level math teacher.
Yeah, there's just a lot of moving parts in the whole thing. But I think the cool thing is the signing program when the kids do choose a high school, because it's an open enrollment state. Kids can go to whatever district they want to go to, whatever school they want to go to. And do you think that's helped build the program too, with just that pride?
Absolutely. And we call them connectors. We have to have connecting programs or events, if you will, to get the kid from the Futures program into the high school. And so they have to envision a place that this is my school.
Yeah.
For example, I went to Lincoln High School. I played baseball for Coach Pat Smaldone, And when I was in 8th grade, he came down and gave 8 of us a T-shirt.
Uh-huh.
And I really felt like that was the signing day. He was recruiting me,
Uh-huh.
and it was just a T-shirt. But I went to Lincoln High School because of a T-shirt and played for Coach Smaldone. So what we do is we do events where we get the kid from our futures programs, our K through 8 programs, or middle schools, and connect them to the high school. Last Saturday, we had a shadow day. We had about 50 kids, and we
Wow.
just walked them through Westie High School
Uh-huh.
on a Saturday. And envision yourself being in this classroom or in this gym. And then at the end of the year, we do a signing very similar to a college day where the kids come out and they sign a letter of intent to come to Westie, and we give you gear and we give you the hoodie and you've been accepted. And this is right around the time when legally they can start practicing with their high school team
Yeah.
in May.
Yeah. And so you went to Lincoln with a T-shirt and said, "We have some kids coming now for a hoodie." Is that
For a
right?
hoodie or a T-shirt.
Is that right? Well, and when I first started into administration in my career, a lot of years ago now, um, I'm a musician by trade. Education came later in terms of my profession. But I remember talking to someone who was trying to influence me to go into administration, and I was just trying to wrap my head around what administrators do anyway, because until you've sat in the chair, you really don't know that. And the person looked at me and said, when times come like budget cuts and things like that, you have a choice. You can either be in the system supporting those things that we know, like athletics, like the arts, that bond kids to school, or you can continue down your music path and be that person. Where do you think you can have the biggest impact? And I know school districts are always looking at ways to be more efficient, to save money. And sometimes when enrollment drops and things like that, I've seen it over and over throughout my career. Some of the most important things are the things first on the chopping block. Things like staff development, things like the arts, things like athletics. Where do you find your ability to market the programs in such a way that you have the influence that says this is really important and it's too important to cut? Because it is not cheap. I know that, especially as big as the programs are that you're managing now system-wide.
That's interesting, especially the rising cost of athletics, right? When you think about a football helmet, how much that the price has increased for football. A baseball bat now is $500.
That's crazy.
And so you're saying, man, that's 5 textbooks. But I think when we think what keeps kids engaged in school, and I tell this to parents all the time, and I'm a dumb jock by trade, and I have 2 college athletes as daughters, and I tell them, well, name me your math teacher. Tell me who your math teacher is. And I will. And I don't think 90% of the people can tell you who the kid's math teacher is in high school, but we can tell you who the football coach is.
Yeah.
And so, and not that one's more important than the other, but what we're talking about is how do we keep kids engaged in school? And for kids like me from who struggled, the connectors were the coaches, were the game. I had to meet the certain requirements to perform academically.
Yeah.
And
It's a good point. Talk about that because there's a distinct correlation there.
We know that athletes who participate in sports do better in school in extremely high percentages in the 90 percentile because you have to. And it was important. My attendance alone increased because my coach said, you need to be here every day. And it went from probably missing every Thursday and Friday in middle school to having perfect attendance all through high school.
Yeah.
Because it was important, I had to be here. And then I started the concept of engaging. But if I'm not connected, it's really hard to engage.
Yeah.
And so we need these connecting activities such as band, music, drama, sports. These aren't antagonistic to the education system. These are your point guards.
Yeah.
These are the guys who connect you to the school, who are passing you the ball to help you be successful. And so we always say connect to the program, be part of the system.
Yeah, eligibility is something that we always thought about in the high school years. And now with futures, what have you done with that to increase that academic pride, I guess, and being able to participate?
Absolutely, because we are a school functioning program. We have expectations academically as well as from attendance,
How young?
all the way down to third grade.
Okay,
So from our third grade through our eighth graders, we have eligibility, and
that's pretty cool.
and there's you have to be eligible. Now I get it. We could get into each class, but we have a process of pass fail for the younger kids. But in middle school, it's very similar to high school. So that concept of eligibility isn't going to be foreign to them by class period. And then we have a 90% attendance policy that you have to maintain for all of our athletes.
That's important because chronic truancy is a real problem across the United States, not just in Colorado. I know the pandemic brought some of that on it, just magnified it. Some kids just didn't come back, or they only came back part-time, and that's been 5 years ago, right? So that eligibility part, I can see where that instills a lot of discipline in our younger learners. So let me switch gears here for a second. So you've held a lot of roles. You've been a high school principal. You've been a teacher. You've had just multiple roles in your career. For people who are listening and thinking about that, what do you think someone who's doing the job of coach or someone who's doing the job of principal, what do you think people really need to know to be able to do those specific roles? And even Title IX, because that's a whole...
NHR.
Yeah.
You could rabbit trail each of the roles, but I think one of the things is servant leadership that really comes to my soul, and the concept of being there at the grassroots level with the problem, trying to help be a problem solver. Normally, you're not the problem
Yeah.
solver; you're one of them. So every role that I've served in, I come into it thinking, how can we help the system be better?
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was a teacher, which I absolutely loved. I thought I was going to be a 50-year PE teacher at Lincoln. It was my dream job. I got to coach every day. And then a principal asked me to be a dean, and then it started the ladder of leadership as you start climbing up. And then a couple years later, I was a principal, and I had no business being the principal. And the funny part is I became the principal of the very school I used to break the windows of at West High School.
That's karma.
And we have a funny story with Dr. Jordan about a kid breaking a window, and I actually chased him down, and she's laughed and said, "Your principal used to do that too." But I think being at the grassroots with specifically the kids in the community and helping our parents navigate. So whether the title didn't, I didn't work for the title.
Yeah.
I worked for the kids in the community. So in my soul, I don't care what my title is. I just want to be with kids in the community.
Yeah, there's work to be done.
There's work to be done.
Regardless of the title, and systems leadership, which is what I think you're talking a lot about, is so critical. Is so important, because if we only do something over here, it goes nowhere. Just like your feeder system.
Absolutely.
But I just thought that was an interesting thing to think about, because in a life cycle of a leader in education, your job's going to change a lot. And you're exactly right. I believe that too, Gabe, that titles are irrelevant. It's really about the work of the kids. And I hear you talking about being a solution seeker inside that system and just creative. And I just want to thank you for being with us today. I think that the audience, if they're listening to this, will get a lot from it in terms of maybe how I navigate into a different job at some point, or a different role in the whole educational system like that. Well, Gabe, I really appreciate you being with us today. This is part one of a two-part podcast. Obviously, this is about athletics and activities in your world, but we're also going to have someone next week talk about the arts. because it's the same coin, just two different sides. And I think for anyone listening today, I hope that you really gain some valuable information and just some things to think about as you navigate your career and your next position where you can make a big impact. So I want to thank the Entrusted audience for being with us today, for spending a few heartbeats. All of us are issued just a certain number, and we appreciate you spending some of those with us. And like I always said to my team when I would end a meeting, rock on with your bad selves. It's important work.